Are you living in a lot of guilt about all the things that you're not doing in your life that you know you should be doing to help yourself grow, develop, or overcome areas that you want to improve on in your life? Well, if you do, make sure you watch this video because I'm going to teach you a cool way of approaching this that is much healthier for you in your life. So one thing I've learned in helping lots of people with fitness and just growth in general is that so many people live in a guilt around the things that I'm not doing to help myself progress. I'm going to say it again because it's kind of important. A guilt around all the things I'm not doing to help myself progress in my life. And the problem with this guilt is it often ends up taking people to a worse place. So they feel guilty, so they may end up disconnecting, they might just feel crap about themselves. So the effects of this guilt often doesn't actually lead to action, it leads to a regression on their journey. Now, when I start working with people, one thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to introduce tools that will help them be a higher level version of themselves. And one of the greatest tools that I believe in, and one that I use a lot myself, and one that if you've watched many of my videos, you would have heard me talk about, is the weekly meeting. Now, the weekly meeting is a tool where basically you sit down about 30 minutes once a week and you plan out your whole week in front of you. And when I start to introduce a weekly meeting to people in their life, a really fascinating thing happens in the first period of time. In the first period of time, when someone starts doing a weekly meeting, they set themselves up to fail. So what happens is they first do their week, like I see it every time. So the first couple of times these people do these weekly meetings, they come back and they say to me, Bevan, I only did like 50% of what I plan to do within my week. And I kind of know this now, so I kind of say, well, that's kind of what I expected. You know, I expected you to overload what you thought you could get put in your week. And what happens is over the next few weeks, they start to figure out what is realistic in their week. And it probably takes about 6 weeks for people to figure this out. So what happens is over the first 6 weeks, that first week, like 50% of the things they write down in their weekly meeting happen. Then the next week, it might be 60, 70, 80, 90, and so on. And then they get to the point where they probably sit around that 90% range. Now, the weekly meeting is a really important tool for planning, for organization, for thinking ahead to make sure you're successful in the week that's in front of you. But one of the most amazing benefits of the weekly meeting is people learn to understand what is realistic within a week. And this is where I see massive value from my weekly meeting. When I'm doing my weekly meeting, at the end of the week or at the end of my meeting, one of the things I'm understanding is this realistic for the week that I have in front of me? Now, why is this important for the guilt that people sit in? So if we think about the guilt that people sit in, it's often because they're not doing the things that they should be doing. But one of the biggest problems people face is the expectation is way too high when they put those things in front of themselves. So they might say, I want to lose weight and here are all the things that I need to be doing, but the expectation they put on themselves is unrealistic. And because it's unrealistic, they basically set themselves up to fail, so they don't really take the actions in place. And this is where the weekly meeting works so powerfully, because what happens in the weekly meeting, if you stick at it for a period of time, is you understand what I can fit in a week. Now, I've been doing my weekly meeting for probably, jeepers creepers, over 10 years now. So for a long time, I've done my weekly meeting and I just know what I can fit in a week. And so sometimes I might have a couple projects and one of them, they might be big chunky projects. And I know that this project needs a bit of time and energy, but I look at the week in front of me and I go, it ain't gonna happen this week. Because when I've done my weekly meeting, I understand what I can fit in my week. So instead of feeling guilty about the project I'm not doing this week, I understand that next week I'm going to have more time and that's when I can commit time to that project. So that broader program or the broader tool of the weekly meeting makes me understand what I can fit in a week, but also it removes the guilt of the things that I don't have to fit in. And then what I can do is I can plan to put those things aside right now. Actually, a really good example right now, I'm working on a couple business projects and I've got 3 projects I need to do. And the list of priorities, there was one project which I had to get done first, another one second, and another one third. So the first project I finished about 2 weeks ago, and I had 2 weeks where I just chunked that out. And then I knew the second project had to wait till afterwards. Now, when I was working on the first project, I wasn't feeling guilty about not doing the second project. I knew that once I got that done, I had time in my next weekly meeting to work on that next project. And this is one of the most important reasons we need to use planning to remove guilt from our life. Now, we do need to put realistic expectations in place, but this is where planning is so important, because the longer you have amazing planning tools like a weekly meeting, you understand what is realistic and what is fair to ask yourself in the time in front of you. And when you can understand what is realistic and fair, and you understand that you can trust that what will need to happen can happen in the future, all the guilt is removed. And the real value of this is you're not just removing the guilt, you can then feel empowered because you are doing the things that you can do in a realistic manner right now. So if you are that person who sits in guilt around all the things that you're not doing, maybe a couple of questions to ask yourself is, first of all, have I put a realistic expectation on myself in this area? Secondly, what is realistic for me to actually put in place in this next moment in time? And then thirdly, what can I delay and know that will happen in the future and not feel guilty about right now? Now, you may want to incorporate a tool like my weekly meeting, but ideally when you can put these steps in place, a few things are going to happen. A, there's a higher chance that you'll take the actions that you can take today. B, you'll remove or lessen the guilt that you sit in. And then 3, you'll feel freer and better about yourself along the way, which ultimately means you stay on your pathway. So if you are that person who feels guilty about the things you're not doing, implement these steps and let me know how you get along